getting settled. Give us another minute to let everybody join in. We're very excited about tonight's Q&A. These are not the right headphones. Here are the right headphones. There we go. Bear with us. Saul, do you hear me now?
Yes.
Good. That's even better. Okay, folks, we're going to start in just 1 minute. Let me get us all situated. Thank you all. I like to just fill the air so people don't feel like they're entering a silent room. We'll get started with our Q&A. I hope you had a chance to see the films, Saul and Ruby's Holocaust Band, and enjoyed it too. Holocaust Survivor Band, excuse me, to be precise. Let me start by saying, I guess we could officially start. Welcome. I am Isaac Zablocki. I am the Director of Film Programs at the Marlene Meyerson JCC Manhattan. Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation for the film Saul and Ruby's Holocaust Survivor Band. We're really excited about this event and excited to have your special guests tonight who I'll introduce in a moment. First, I'll tell you that next Tuesday night, starting this November 23rd, we have the film Sorrows screening. We're part of the virtual release of that, directed by Jesse Dillon, who is the son of, I'll let you figure that out. We'll be hosting a Q&A with Jesse as well. So you could start watching the film between November 20th and December 4th. It'll be available. And on November 23rd, we're going to have an afternoon conversation with Jesse Dillon. So we're excited about that. The following week, we're going to have the participants of the Netflix show On the Spectrum. Love on the Spectrum, excuse me, for those of you who have seen that. If not, this is your time to catch up, watch Love on the Spectrum. And we'll have them on Tuesday, November 24th for a conversation at 7 p.m. This has been a hit show on Netflix. And then that following week is our Other Israel Film Festival. Please check out the full listing of Other Israel, which is up now with all of our panels and all of the amazing programs. It's going to be a fantastic week of Israeli films that really shine a light on minority populations in Israel. That following week, we also are going to have Edgar Carrot and Inbal Pinto with us. So stay tuned and keep track of all of our emails. We're constantly adding more and more films. But now it gives me great pleasure to introduce the director of tonight's film, Todd Lending. Todd, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for
having me. Thank you, Isaac.
And I'll call him a surprise guest, is for those of you who know Saul and Ruby, Saul Dreyer himself is here. Hello, Saul. Thank you for being here.
Hi, how are you?
If I yell, it's for Saul's sake.
Yes, say not aloud. I have to hear louder.
And you know it's definitely him because he's sitting by his drum set, as you can tell.
I'm sitting by my drums.
Excellent. Now Saul has to leave at exactly 8 o'clock for dinner and then an early bedtime. So we're gonna jump right in. And let me start by asking Todd. Todd, how did this all start for you?
I had just finished a project and was looking for my next project, and a friend of mine showed me this short 3-minute clip that was on the New York Times site. That was a little piece on Saul and Ruby, and I watched it and immediately fell in love with these two guys and thought, it's too, I wish I had met them before this filmmaker had done this 3-minute thing. I'm sure he's doing a longer piece, and I told her, it's too bad we missed it. She said, well, you don't know that. You don't know that for sure. So she said, you should give him a call. So I did. I gave Saul a ring, and it turned out that filmmaker was not doing a longer film. That was it, was a 3-minute piece. And by this time, Saul and Ruby had several other companies that were pursuing them. I jumped on a plane the next day. I live in Chicago. And jumped on a plane and went down to Coconut Creek where Saul lives. We met in a deli, and we talked about doing a documentary. And I told him, you know, I gave him my credentials, I gave him my story, I told him I was ready to go immediately. I felt like this is a story that needs to be done right then, right now. They're the beginning of their band and the trajectory of wherever it was going to go was starting right then and there, and I wanted to capture that. And there was no time to do fundraising, so I used funds that I had in my own development fund in my company, and Saul and Ruby agreed, let's do it, and that was it. We signed a contract and we were off and running.
And Saul just walked away, but Saul, I was going to ask you from your perspective. Is he there?
No.
No, stepped away.
There he is. There he is.
Saul, can you hear me?
Yeah, here.
Saul.
Good. From your perspective, so Todd comes in and you gave him full access, it looks like.
Yes, yeah.
And why were you so comfortable with that?
Well, because whenever we went, Todd was right there on the boat. He was on the plane. We went to Warsaw, Poland. We went to Las Vegas. We went any place we went. He came right away. I was following. We were filming for 2.5 years.
And really, Todd, you were lucky enough to capture so many beautiful moments throughout. I mean, especially I feel like the moments, of course, in Poland, but also monumental moments in their lives. Did you move in with them? Is that did you bunk down there?
I did not literally move in with them. I would take trips back and forth, but I spent a lot of time down there. And when you do these type of what we call longitudinal documentary films, where you're following people over years, it's important to also step back. It's important to actually not move in and be with them 24/7. It's important for you to allow your characters to kind of go on with their lives naturally, and you go in and out of it, so it doesn't become too contrived for the filming.
And Saul, from your perspective, having Todd there, did that change anything for you, having a camera in the room, or did it not impact you at all?
I beg your pardon?
Did it impact you having a camera in the room? Were you any different because there was a camera in the room?
No, the camera didn't impact me because I'm used to it. I have a neighbor who was a photographer, so he had all the cameras, so I saw everything. So when they came, and then also I was filmed for Spielberg and the question for the Shoah.
Yes, for the Righteous Persons Foundation's program.
So before that came, I was ready already for interview.
Well, yes, you all definitely seemed very comfortable, and it allowed for really beautiful moments to come out of the film. The film was originally called Saul and Ruby to Life, L'chaim.
Yeah.
Remember that correctly?
Yes.
Why the change in name?
Well, it actually went through 2 name changes. The first title was Saul and Ruby, Life is a Cabaret. That was the first title. That's when we first started filming. We didn't know what the story was going to be. Then after finishing filming, that title didn't quite make sense. As much as I love the sound of that title, Saul and Ruby's Life is a Cabaret, it sounded too light, for the, I think, the depth of what these guys had been through. And being survivors and what we experienced when we went to Poland with them is not a cabaret. So then it went to Life, Saul and Ruby to Life, which L'chaim, which I still like quite a bit, and I think does capture a big part of the story. But it went through its final change when Samuel Goldwyn Films came on board as the distributor. And they were the ones that suggested we go with Saul and Ruby's Holocaust Survivor Band. I had considered that title before, But I thought the word Holocaust was going to be a turnoff for a lot of people. I was really worried about that people would get the wrong idea that this is, another Holocaust film. We've seen enough. We don't need that. And this isn't that. This is a film that is just, it's very much in the present day. It's very much about how these guys have rebuilt their lives and what they're doing now as musicians and what they're doing now as older survivors. And yes, we get into their history, but it's as much about the present, if not more so, than the past. But I acquiesced. I agreed, and we changed the title.
I happen to know that sometimes that's an attracting element for certain audiences.
For certain audiences, yeah.
It's definitely true.
Yeah.
But Saul, this question for you is really, it's really something that I think the film says very nicely, but I kind of want you to spell it out for me. Why is it so important for you to have this band called a Holocaust survivor band? And
well, I tell you what happened. One morning I waked up and I went to my computer and I saw a woman play piano. She was 108 years old and she passed away, Mrs. Somers, London. She was liberated in Theresienstadt. She was playing music. There was the Theresienstadt was a propaganda concentration camp for the German. When I saw this, I woke up, I said, oh my God, the 350 million people in the United States are gonna go and put together a Holocaust survivor band. And I woke up my wife, and I told her the story. She says, you're crazy, Jewish. Well, this was on a Thursday. Saturday, once a month, I go to my services to the temple. So we had lunch. So I saw the rabbi. So I told him the same story. I said, Rabbi Henry, what I want to do. He says, you old man, you're 89 years old. What do you need this for? You retired already 10 years. What do you need? So he says, you crazy. So two people told me I'm crazy. I went anti-contrary and I went against them. And Monday morning, I took my checkbook in my pocket. Around the corner is the store, Sam Ash. I walked in and I bought a brand new set of drums. I told him to pack it in and take me. He packed them. I had a small Lexus. You can imagine the drums all over the car. I pull him home. I come home. I park the car. I go upstairs. My wife said, where were you? And I said, I went a little shopping, but anyway, I brought you a present. She said, yeah, where's the present? I said, you have to go downstairs with me to the car, I'll show it to you. My wife was lazy. She went with me, I'm going downstairs. I opened the doors. She saw the drums. I give out, either you go or the drums go. She didn't want me to play. Well, I spent almost $1,000. I said, Mrs. Dreyer, I'm gonna storage, I'm gonna store them, I'm gonna do this and this. And she started to feel sorry for me and said, bring it home. I brought it home, I set it up. Now I got a problem. I'm a drummer, I'm a musician, I got a company, Holocaust survivor band, but I haven't got no musicians. And I found somehow somebody recommended Ruby. And after Ruby, they recommended another people, we're talking 5 years back, so the Holocaust was still alive. And I put together orchestra. And I booked that job on 96th Street in Collins in Miami for Rabbi Lipsker. You heard about him? I booked that for Sukkot. So we came there, 5 musicians. We set up in the Sukkot. I'm ready to play. The rain came in and we had to run away. We had to pack in. We went to a little hall. They had a little stage. We played. They had separate, they were Orthodox. They had separate women and separate men. We're playing. After we're playing, a woman comes to me and tells me, could you give me your business card? I says, yes. I gave her a card. She says, you're going to hear from me in a few days. And what happened, this woman is a Holocaust survivor child, and she's a music writer. And she called me up. He says, Mr. Dreyer, are you ready? Yes. She says, you're going to have to take yourself and 2 musicians, and we're going to go to Las Vegas. Dudu Fisher is there, and we want you to anchor him. Well, I heard this. I said, my God, I just started. I hold my drums, all the practice in the house. We took the plane. It was Ruby, his daughter, me, and we took my guitarist, I think, I'm not sure. We're coming to Las Vegas. Dudu Fisher is very religious. So you know, Friday we had a Shabbat dinner, and he says, Saul, tomorrow, he says, we won't practice. We're going to play without practice. I trust you guys. And this was on a Saturday. Sunday, we were davening, you know, and eating, you know, it was a Shabbat. Sunday, he wanted to practice. We didn't have no time. So we set up on the stage, and I was sitting with the drums. Ruby had his accordion, and I had his, how you call it, the shakers. And he comes in and says, well, let's start. He started to sing bells. Bells, mein State, bells, and we were following him. It was so beautiful that we got a standing ovation. Then he continued, and Mr. Edelson, he was honored. You know Edelson, he owns the whole. So I was sitting next to him. His wife is Israeli, so he says, how old are you? At that time, I was 89 years old, or almost 90. I said, 89 years old. He says, oh, give up. Miriam, how you like this? Look at this man. He's 89 years old. Look, he's dancing, going. I can't even stand up. So I says, Mr. Edelson, you got another things in that. You see, I got music in my head. You got money in your pocket, so what do you worry about it? And anyway, that's how it started. After this, we took over like a rocket. We played in Detroit. We played in Hamilton, Canada. We played in Pennsylvania. We played in Austin, Texas. We played, and I tell you the trip player all over, and I don't remember when. And then we started with the first street went to Warsaw, Poland. In Warsaw, Poland, happened like this. John Daniels came to my house. I invited Ruby, and he said, it was my house, and Ruby was playing his accordion, and I was playing my drums. And he says, gentlemen, I'm going back home. He's from England, but he lives in Poland. I'm going back home, and I'm going to bring you to Poland. And the rest is history, right, Dad?
Absolutely.
That's it. We play in front of 4,000 people on the street where the ghetto was, and the police were directing traffic. We played 2 orchestras. My orchestra played, and also we played with a Polish orchestra. On top of it, we had another fellow. He joined us. He was the best singer at that time in Poland. Correct?
Muniak.
Yeah, that's Muniak Staszek.
The Bono of Portugal.
We were on television, we were interviewed, we were big Messiah, but you have to understand, before the concert in Poland, I was with my family twice in Poland already, but at that time I was not a musician. So when I came to Poland the 3rd time, I had a concert. And also, I played in Brooklyn for 3,700 people in the King's Theater with Get Elbas. Then I filmed in Warsaw, Poland with Get Elbas and Dudu Fisher. I filmed with 120 children were filming a piece. Then after this, I went Get Elbas. I was in Israel. I had a concert at Bet Shemesh. After Bet Shemesh, I was filmed Tel Aviv. Then I was filming a museum. I forgot the name of the city, and with Elbas and with his father. Then I came home, and I went to Brazil. I had 3 concerts in Brazil. First of all, I split with Ruby. I had another orchestra. Ruby was separate, and I was separate. To Brazil, I was playing in Brazil. They had a drive for a monument, the Holocaust monument in Sao Paulo, and they had a private party that was funded, the wealthiest and the good Jewish people, and the rabbi had a drive, and we put together over $1 million. I had a speech that time, and
Amazing.
then I spot the next day I played for children. So that's how I started. In the back, except one thing I'm gonna tell you, I deciding now, I'm 95 years old. I got 4 children. I have 10 grandchildren. I have 2 great-grandchildren. I have a son who had just a baby in Israel. He's living in Israel already 6 years. I got 2 orchestra. I got a Holocaust survivor band, and I just a few months put together a door-to-door band of children that go to high school. And my first concert with them was in Dallas, Texas. They had the young B'nai Brit, 5,500 children from all over the world. I was playing with them.
Amazing, amazing. But you skipped over an important part here. You and Ruby broke up. Is
And
this
then the virus came.
the
Then
Beatles?
almost the virus came. I played for the film in Miami when Todd won the first prize. I played in Atlanta when Todd won the first prize. And now I'm playing, and I'm all over the world. I don't know what to do, boys. They're driving me bananas.
You got to tell me, Saul, where's Ruby? What happened with Ruby?
Ruby, first of all, Ruby doesn't feel good. He's got also diabetes. And then I couldn't do together. And one day he called me this afternoon, Mr. Todd. So I said, Todd, I'm available. I can't call Ruby now. He doesn't drive. And I don't know how to go about.
But can I give?
We're playing together only for Todd. Whenever Todd invites us, whenever he shows the film, me and Ruby play together.
So let me give a little context, because it's a little confusing. First of all, a lot of what Saul described were things that happened after the film was finished. All this traveling he was talking about, just for your audience to understand. That it kind of became a blur because he didn't separate when the film ended. Then I went on to do this. So he described a lot of what happened as working with El Gazba and Dudu Fisher later on. That was all after filming was done. And his split with Ruby occurred after the film was finished. And, like many bands, eventually they split, they have disagreements. It's up to Saul. It's not worth it to go into the detail, but there just was a split in kind of their visions about where to go, which way to take the band. They had separate visions. So they still come together. They've played together for the film. They were in Miami together. They were in Atlanta together. As Saul said, they've been on Zoom together. So it's not like they don't talk to each other. Actually, Saul and Ruby are pretty close. But they've just decided not to play together as a band regularly.
I understand.
Right, Saul?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Folks,
I'm ready.
I know Saul has to leave. Saul has to leave in 5
minutes. I'm ready to play a stuff. How many people you got there?
We got 33 people.
How many?
33.
Okay, let them sit. I'm going to start to play for them one song, and we're going to be finished. All right? 1 second.
Folks, we're just going to take a musical break. Enjoy one song, and then we'll open your mics for any questions. Any questions that you might have, put them in the chat, and then we'll call on you to ask questions directly to Todd, the director.
Okay.
This is what happened last time. So we can't hear it. We can't hear it.
Now, Zoom is not great for live music.
No, he's tried this before. It doesn't. Yeah.
It looks good.
Saul. Okay, Saul. Stop. Saul. Hey. Saul, stop.
Okay, put that out.
Big finish.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Saul.
How was it? All right?
Amazing. It's a good thing that your neighbors are deaf.
Well, I beg your pardon?
It's a good thing your neighbors can't hear you.
The whole death.
Exactly. Saul, can I ask you one more question before you leave?
All right. Anything else?
One last question.
Anything else?
Yes, Saul.
Yeah.
At every concert, you say "never again," never
Yes.
forget. You say "never forget."
Never forget, never again, I said.
Never forget. Why is it so important for people to remember at this time?
I beg your pardon?
Why is it so important at this time for people to remember the Holocaust?
Because I decided till I die, I'm gonna try to beat the anti-Semitism. And remember the people, the anti-Semites, they should know that they should never forget there was a Holocaust. That's why I say never again, never again, never again. It will be never again. So long I live, it will be never again.
Thank you, Saul. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Say goodbye to your audience. God bless him, and God bless New York. I was in New York last year, and I float. We had the Israeli parade. I was on top of it playing for everybody. You remember, the Israeli float, the Israeli parade on Fifth Avenue? Yeah, I was there, and I float. WJC and I float. I was playing.
Hopefully, you'll be back soon.
I beg your pardon?
Hopefully, you'll be back soon.
Oh, yeah, I'm booked. I'm booked with a Zoom in Temple Emmanuel for the 27th of January with Ruby.
27. Oh, yes. Yes.
Holocaust Remembrance Day. Thank you, Saul.
Fabulous. Thank you, Saul. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, folks, I'm happy to take, we were happy to take questions. If you have any questions, put them in the chat and we'll open your mic, or you could raise your hand. We could also open your mic. Todd, why was it important for you at this time to tell the story?
Oh, well, I've been making films for 38 years now, and I'm Jewish, and I've never made a Jewish themed film. And I had always wanted to do a film that that has something to do with my own background, my own personal history. And I never imagined doing anything on the Holocaust. I felt like the Holocaust was a subject that had been covered every which way. And I never imagined doing a film that would have anything to do with it. But like I said earlier, when we first started the conversation, when I met Saul and Ruby, and when I saw what they were doing, and when obviously a very important part of their story was the fact that they were survivors, I just felt like this is it. This is the time for me to do this. This is also, we're living through still a really difficult time in this country. And we all know the racism, the prejudice, the anti-Semitism is just, it's all right underneath the surface. And it's something we have to deal with. So the whole world, for that matter, you know.
For sure. No, I think with the ending, you really make the film very timely and make a connection to today. This isn't just about the past and remembering the Holocaust. It's remembering those lessons and how it impacts our world today.
Absolutely.
I was going to ask one more question, then I'm going to take some questions from the audience. But one of the things I loved about the film was actually it has a very interesting structure, and I'm actually fascinated to know a little bit about it. I'm sure you filmed these guys for 2.5 years and had all this material, as we can all see from just being with Saul for half an hour. There's plenty of material that I'm sure is very hard to cut. But I noticed that you wait till kind of the last third of the film to really tell their Holocaust stories.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of know they're a Holocaust band, know that it's there, but don't really get their stories till that end. And I thought that was a wonderful move and a nice touch to kind of put it together. Tell us a little bit about that decision and about this editing process, how you constructed a story out of this.
Sure. Well, first of all, I shot 250 hours of footage. And cut that down to 80 minutes. So 99% of what I filmed was not used in the film. And that's typical of these type of longitudinal type stories. You film hundreds of hours, you're following people over years, and this is pretty typical. And the actual crafting of the story happens in the editing. Like I said, also at the beginning of our discussion, I didn't see this as a quote unquote Holocaust story. I was most interested in what was happening to them in the present, and this journey that they were going on as new musicians and starting new lives at this late time in their own lives. So I wanted to carefully weave in the whole history of the Holocaust with them. And what I did is throughout the film, I dropped little hints, little pieces of history along the way until we got to Poland. And then in Poland, that's obviously where their whole story unfolds. So I felt like it was a natural arc. It's organic to the story. I didn't feel like I was manipulating anything or, finding a structure that really wasn't connected to the story. So that's how I approach the editing. I go into the editing room and I really try and let the footage talk to me and tell me, what is the structure of this story. Every film has its own structure. And there's a filmmaker an editor I worked with once when I was quite young, right out of college, who called himself an Aristotelian editor. I said, what are you talking about? And he said, well, Aristotle believed that in nature there are inherent forms within nature, that when Michelangelo carved the David, he discovered David in the stone. I mean, that was a structure that was in there that he chipped away and found. So I kind of look at film editing that way. You have to find the structure that's in there, and this felt right to me.
I love it. Made it really fascinating.
Thank
Let
you.
me take some questions from the audience. We're going to start with Ari. Ari, you're on the line.
So I was born in Poland, and and I'm familiar with Poland. I visit Poland a fair amount, or used to visit, and I grew up in Israel. So my question to you, when you were spending the period of the film shows Poland as so friendly and so beautiful, and the people are so nice to you guys in the film. Did you experience anything about Jewish, anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic while you're in Poland?
You know, to be honest, we really did not. My grandpa came right from Poland. He came right from Warsaw, and I have family that died in the ghetto there. But so I had my radar up, you know, for this kind of thing, for, you know, could be a look, or it could be something that someone says. Look, we were kind of in a bubble, I would say. So I can't, you know, it obviously exists there. I know that there's been a movement in Poland. You probably are aware of this, where Gentile Poles are looking for some Jewish connection. It's a fad. I mean, it's something that, you know, they're now trying to take. Well, they're taking pride in it. If they can find some Jewish lineage, they're doing 23andMe, and, you know, it's now popular. So, you know, we also know that there's a right-wing movement in Poland. There's a right-wing movement in Germany. We know that there's plenty of anti-Semitism in Sweden and Norway. So we didn't run into it. The people we ran into, the people we met, were all, you know, just very, very welcoming. And I have to say that the crowd, there were about 2,500, maybe 3,000 people at the concert that they gave, the outdoor concert. These were all mostly Gentile Poles. I mean, this wasn't advertised as a Jewish concert, and I could see it, I could tell, and they were so into it. I mean, young, middle-aged, old, kids. I mean, it was quite amazing, and it was all Jewish music. It was klezmer, with the exception of Muniek Staszek, who's called you saw it in the film. He's considered the Bono of Poland. So he's kind of a rocker. And he just completely fell in love with the two men. So we did not see it. I'm sure it exists, but we did not see it.
Thank you. We're going to take, we have time for one last question. We're going to take a question from Ava.
Thank you so much for this beautiful film. My mom is a Holocaust survivor from Czechoslovakia. She absolutely refused to go back. So I was a little surprised during the railway scene, when you're traveling from Warsaw to Krakow and you're passing the fields and you're on those tracks. I was surprised that there wasn't a traumatic and emotional reaction from Saul and Ruby about that aspect of the trip. Certainly, Saul's extremely emotional when he sees the apartments. He can't go in because his family died there. That square, his grandmother was killed there. But I was surprised that there wasn't more of a reaction on the tracks, unless that's something you edited out. So please let us know.
No, I did not edit any emotional reaction to the tracks. I did not edit anything out there. I had no idea, you know, how they were going to react going back to these places where they grew up and they had good experiences, and then they had the horrible experience of experiencing the Holocaust. So There were other scenes that were quite powerful and emotional that are not in the film. There was a scene in Treblinka that where we were walking to that monument, that huge monument in Treblinka, and it was raining, and Saul and Ruby, started crying, and that was very, very powerful. And I would have loved to have put that in the film, but you can only handle so much. You can only put so many of these scenes in. You don't want to numb your audience out. You need to be very careful. And the other thing I really struggled with was the footage, the Holocaust footage. I really struggled with. It's sacred imagery. It's been seen. The last thing I want to do is exploit those horrendous images. And the first several cuts that I made of the film, I was so backed away from using graphic Holocaust footage. And a friend of mine said, "You're not using the strong footage that's out there. Why? What's going?" And I explained to her, and she said, "No." She said, "You need to understand the younger generation, kids. My daughter's part of the millennial generation and younger." She said, "They don't know about this," which is so true. They don't. We do. Those of us who are middle-aged and old, a lot of us grew up with this, but there's generations of Americans and Europeans and Asians, et cetera, that don't know about this. So that's when I decided I'm going to put in some heavier scenes. So I'm sorry, I got a little off track of your question there.
But thank you.
Yeah.
I want to give a big thanks to Todd, of course, to Saul for being here with us.
Yes.
Real treats. Thank you so much for having him come on. We hope to continue to celebrate this film. And of course, if Saul and Ruby ever come to New York, we're happy to get the word out so people can see them live.
Great.
What are you working on now, Todd?
Because of COVID, I am actually doing something I've always wanted to do, which is write a novel. So
Wow.
I'm working on a novel that is actually inspired by the film. It's actually a historical novel that takes place in Krakow in 1939. So the film led me to this direction.
Fabulous. So maybe we'll see you back here sometime soon.
Yes. Thank you.
Folks, next week we have Soros and Love on the Spectrum, and then our other Israel Film Festival. Check them all out, jccfilm.org. You could find out what's coming up. Stay safe, folks. We hope to see you in person soon, but till then, please join us for all these virtual events. Thank you, and have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, all.